Call this meeting to order. I hope everybody and your families all had a good Thanksgiving. We finally did our first meet and greet with the employees. Concept was really good. Unfortunately, our timing was not. By the time we were done cooking everything, it was basically time for us to wolf down a couple burgers, and we really never got to mingle with the staff. So a couple things we can tweak next time around, but I do believe the understanding is that we wanted the opportunity to be able to talk with staff or staff talk with us to get to know each other better, and hopefully next time around we can do that. But the concept was still good to begin with, and hopefully everybody had a good lunch. We would like to acknowledge that the land we stand upon today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the neutral peoples. Can I get a mover and a seconder for confirmation of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Fisher, that the agenda for the regular meeting of council dated October 15th of 2024 be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? And motion carries. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest from any member of council at this time? None. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the minutes of the previous meeting? Councillor Deal and Councillor Wilby. That the council of the municipality of Huron East approve the following council meeting minutes as circulated. That's the regular meeting of October 1st of 2024. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Under the consent agenda, are there any requests that any item be removed for discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to point 6.1. It speaks to alcohol sales and the provincial alcohol strategy.
Okay.
For discussion.
Let's do those first, and then we'll do the motion to accept the ballots afterwards. Go ahead.
I just think as far as it goes, I think we have enough places already where alcohol can be sold. Do we need any more? And certainly near schools and things like that. I mean, we already see what's happened with as far as cannabis sales go. So I'd like to speak in favor of supporting this motion.
Okay. And seconded by Councillor Fisher. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor or Deputy Mayor McClellan. The infrastructure is in place to service restaurants and such. Why didn't they just let them have off-premise sales instead of going through all these hoops and loops to put it in a corner store where it's easily available to underage, et cetera, where the people in food service establishments are already trained, they already have knowledge, controls, et cetera. It would have been much simpler to just let restaurants, again, have off-premise sales. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion? And motion carries. Is there any other item that anybody would like to have pulled? Councillor Wilby.
6.2, I had heard that they were looking at an Ontario deposit return program, and I think that'd be a great thing. So I'd like to support that.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Second by Deputy Mayor. Any comments or questions on that issue? All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Are there any other items? Only four of that. Okay. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda? Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Dalton. That the consent agenda item 6.3 to 6.6 be received for information and approved. All those in favor? And motion carries. Under public meetings, hearings, and delegations, the first one, delegation Stuart Lockey, Conservation Area Coordinator, MBCA, Recreational Water and Erosion Control Infrastructure Cost Share Agreement. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor McClellan and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening to provide an update on our recreational water and erosion control infrastructure, which we short form for WECI, and the proposed cost sharing agreement for the Brussels Dam. The Brussels Dam was the only WECI infrastructure located in Huron East for the development of an agreement. I do see some familiar faces from the original presentation back in 2018, when the authority was developing a cost share policy in regards to our 3 owned authority dams and our municipal control structures. Since that time, we now only have 2 authority-owned dams. The Gory Dam was decommissioned in 2020, and we have another dam at Blue Vale, the Pioneer Dam, and we have an agreement with Morris Turnbury for that one. This policy was adopted by the Conservation Authority's membership after a review from all our member municipalities. However, we waited to develop this cost-sharing agreements until we had direction from the province for the M&R WECI fund. We want to make sure that was still available. We also had some changes in the Conservation Authorities Act, which we waited until we had confirmation for that as well. The M&R WECI fund, which is mentioned in that cost share agreement, helps conservation authorities fund repairs and studies to flood and erosion control structures, including dams that are owned by authorities. The program provides funding at a rate of 50% that must be matched by municipal funding. The fund is limited to $5 million, and that's spread out over 900 dams, dikes, channels, and erosion control structures along the rivers and shorelines, with a placement value of approximately $3 billion. So funding through that program is sought through an application process in February and determined using a point system. The recreational dams, such as the Brussels Dam, will likely score low in that funding application as it doesn't provide any flood control. However, the amount of funding that we do request each year varies, and we're encouraged to apply and reapply if we aren't successful in that year. So the proposed cost sharing agreement, which was provided to the municipality for consideration, was developed this spring and was based on that approved policy we developed in 2018. The policy indicates the local municipality is responsible for 50% of costs for major and minor maintenance and repairs. And minor repairs include items that are usually under $1,000 and would be cost shared 50% of the municipality and 50% through the authority. The authority historically has spent around $500 a year on that type of maintenance and repair, which includes some minor cement work, painting, and other repairs as examples. Major repairs that meet the M&R WECI fund criteria would be cost shared 50% municipality and 50% through the WECI fund. If WECI funding is not obtained that year, the municipality would be given the option to proceed with repair at 100% the cost, postpone that repair, or cease the repair. This type of repair also has to follow the Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act, which is regulated in Ontario for those dams. If the structure would need to be decommissioned, then MDCA would cover 100% of the cost of removal through the general levy and WECI funding. If approved, decommissioning of the structure could include full removal of the dam or just removal of the stop logs. This would be identified based on the reason, so the type and extent of the structural damage, or if there was insufficient funds to repair that structure. We also would give Huron the opportunity to take over ownership of the structure if they would like to replace the structure if it was ever required. The agreement indicates that MDC staff would communicate with municipal staff in repairs through annual inspections or as needed if an emergency repair was required. The municipality would be given notice of any major repairs for budgeting considerations with the process that was outlined in the agreement for WECI funding. The good news is the dam is in relatively good condition, and staff spend several days a year doing minor maintenance and repairs. We do have one major repair expected soon, which is repairs to that overflow weir concrete, and it's estimated around $35,000 to have that done. Other repairs aren't so urgent, include armor stone replacement and some future stop log replacements, which we schedule every 30 years. So again, staff would highlight these requirements with the municipality. We bring them to the municipality for consideration and arrange for mutually acceptable timeframes for completion through that agreement. The municipality would only be responsible for the portions of the cost share policy outlined in the agreement and would not be responsible for any of the organization or overseeing of repairs, operations, or be held liable for the repairs or the dam structure. So I think the agreement was sent to the municipality attorneys for consideration, and I would like to thank council for consideration of that cost share agreement, and I would be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Are there any questions or comments from council at this time? Councillor Chartrand.
Thank you. So if the dam's not used for any kind of flood control, what is the purpose of the dam other than recreation?
Right now, that is the purpose right now for recreation in that community. So there's no flood control, no low flow mitigation with those dams. It's strictly, and they're there for recreation.
So what would happen if you left the logs out all the time?
So again, if we left the logs out all the time, it would resort back to, I guess, a decommissioning scenario. We would still have to get approval from MNR to do that through the Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act. And it would just be a general, the river would run through, it would just let the logs out, the river would run through that channel. You would not have the head pond above the dam.
Yeah, I was just curious as what the actual purpose of the dam, what's for, if it wasn't flood control.
Yeah, the old mill ponds were there historically for mill flour.
Right.
And when that was no longer the case, those old mill ponds were basically just recreational. They didn't provide any flood control.
Thanks.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What happens, Mr. Lockie, if we get the storm of the century and that cement work you were talking about gets totally washed out and the dam gets totally washed out and you're back to square one? Is that 50% on our plate or is that all you?
So if it got washed out, that would be looking at doing a rebuilding. So basically, again, it would be dependent on the extent of what happened. But if it was completely washed out where we couldn't just do a repair, it would be a rebuild. We would bring that to Huron East Council for consideration, whether they would like to take over that structure. And we would transfer ownership to Huron East for the rebuilding of that structure. If not, if the decision was not to, then the authority would look at the decommissioning of the structure.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilby.
Yes, that's through the mayor. I was just wondering, who's responsible for that old building?
So the mill right now, several years ago, we came to Huron East and through partnership with the Brussels Trust, the Brussels Community Trust, it's in the process right now of being transferred to the trust. So the mill has plans to be the Maitland Mills Association in partnership with the trust would look at developing, saving the historical site, that building itself. So right now it's being in the process of transferring ownership. We're almost there by the end of this year. We expect that all the surveys will be completed and we'll be ready to draft the agreements.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Stuart. Stuart, what's the timeline for the first repair there, that cement overflow? You have in here for 35,000. When did you say it was expected to be done or should be done?
So that would be in discussions with staff through Huron East. I would like to meet with them. We did meet on site to just kind of roughly go over what I've talked to council about. We don't have a set time frame. So I would sit down with staff to see what their proposed timeline would be for budgeting considerations. And then together bring that to council here for consideration through the agreement for completion. It could be done anytime. There's no urgency. I don't think we have to have it done by next year. It's been in that condition for several years now. So it can wait for a few years, but it's on our annual inspection list as something that needs to be addressed.
Just a quick follow-up. The stop logs, they were just replaced in that dam, didn't they?
2016, I think, or 2014 maybe. We have them scheduled for 2047,
Right.
which is 30 years from the time that we had got them. So yeah, that's 2047 is the next anticipated time.
Thank you.
Councillor Sharp.
So that $35,000 repair, wouldn't that be a perfect application for Wacky?
Correct. So that would be considered a major repair. So we would apply through the WECI funding to see if we can get that 50% dollars. So in that scenario, if we were successful and it was $30,000, the municipality would have $15,000. The WECI fund would supply the other 15.
So based on timing of when you want to get it fixed, putting the cart or the horse in front of the cart, you want to do the Wacky application first and then find out if you're going to get it. And then you can do your timing after that, right?
Correct. So what we would need, the WECI fund, the process is that in February, I need to submit the application. With that application, I would need the approval of funding support from the municipality to say, yes, they are willing to fund that project. And then it would go through their review process. And they would come back to us in 2 months' time saying, yes, you received the funding, or no, you wouldn't. Then if we did receive the funding, we could move ahead with it. If we didn't, we would bring that back to council to address and say we were not successful. Would we like to postpone or try again
Or
next year?
reapply, yeah.
The WECI funding, like I said, there's $5 million per year. That's been consistent, but it's spread out over those 900 structures through all the conservation authorities in Ontario. So in certain years, that 5 million is used up for flood control structures, which are, they are there for flood control. In other years, there is funding available, and then they just go down through their scoring rank. And if we happen to rank high enough, we would get that funding.
So Stuart, if council was to approve it in the budget pending approval of the grant, would that be sufficient?
I think that would be sufficient for the application.
But that way, your organization would know that if we don't get the grant, don't come knocking.
Right.
If you get the grant, let us know, and we'll step up and do our part.
Correct. I think as long as we had the approval that Huron East was willing to support that 50%, then the application could go in.
Councilor Dalton, for you?
Well, I just was gonna comment, you said that you didn't feel that this dam was gonna be a priority for WECI funding because it's not a flood control dam. Have you had any success with WECI?
So the only WECI that we've had to apply for is the dam decommissioning, when we did the Gory decommissioning there. So we applied first for a safety. So if it's a public safety concern, that ranks it right to the top. So if there's a safety concern under WECI, that goes right to the top, even though it is a recreational structure. But if it's just a general repair, then it would still fall under that scoring system. And we haven't had to apply through, in my time, through the WECI for a repair like this. So our members have made a decision back in 2010 that our dams are recreational structures, and we were just basically repairing them on a maintenance side with the outcome of decommissioning them when the time came. So this agreement allows for the local municipality to actually keep that structure maintained if they wish to do so.
Councilor
So
Chartrand?
even if we don't get WACI and we, the municipality and your group decides to do the repair, either way, it's only gonna cost the municipality 50%.
Not through, if it's a major repair and the WECI funding does not come through, then it would be up to the municipality to fund 100%.
Oh, I thought it was a 50-50
$30,000.
split with,
It's 50-50 split through Maitland Valley getting the WECI funding.
oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, that's how it works on the major. The minor stuff is 50-50 regardless up to that $1,000. That's just straight 50-50. But on a major repair.
What dollar figure is considered major?
Well, so if it falls under the WECI fund, and it's roughly about $1,000 we looked at when we started developing the agreements, anything that's over $1,000, would be in that range. So, yeah. The LIRA, Lakes Emerging Improvement Act, they basically really specify what requires us to apply, like through the WECI side of things. And it doesn't take much to hit that threshold where we apply for the WECI funding. So $1,000 is roughly an idea of where it is.
Okay, are there any other questions for Stuart at this time? Stuart, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
My only question is, at this point, is that, what would bring it, how do we bring it back to budget just for council to consider when we're doing budget this year? Just so that if we want to put a motion forward, that if they get it, we do our part, or at least have the discussion or whatever.
I would, when we get to the staff report on accepting the agreement, you can also have a discussion about whether something you apply if you want them to do that in 2025, but I think the starting point, from my understanding, was there still have to be conversations with staff and get that agreement of when they would want to put that forward. So I'm not sure if it was listed as a priority for 2025 at this point, but maybe for 2026 is when we get that information with staff working with MBCA.
Our second presentation tonight, Mark Nunkus. Local Immigration Partnership. Welcome, Mark.
Good evening, and thanks for having me today. I have a presentation for you folks. We're gonna spend some time talking about immigration and Huron County, but also about Huron East. So I think the first thing to do is to tell you about the immigration partnership. We exist within the sphere of the County of Huron's economic development. Next slide. And our goal is really to create a community or communities that are welcoming for newcomers who move to Canada and that they feel supported here, that they're at home here and they're integrated into all spheres of life. And so we kind of have four strategic priority areas. And we work with a host of various partners to increase and strengthen collaboration. So all of us are working together and are notified to strengthen capacity so that people know how to adequately respond to newcomers, to build welcoming communities that foster connections and deliver information that people need to make decisions, and to conduct research to deepen understanding of immigrant needs, assets, and service gaps. The immigration partnerships is federally funded. There's 89 of them across Canada. We are funded to work in Huron County. Some of our neighbors have immigration partnerships, Perth County does not. So we often find, because of the joint services that Huron County shares, that some of our work extends into Perth County as well. We were started in 2010. And as mentioned, we are within the economic development sphere at the county level. Our goal is really to make this the place that people want to come to and want to stay. And we'll go through a bit more of the data here. So the need for immigration, Huron County's population, if you look at the graphs here, are interesting. So you can see that from the time of birth to about the age of 49, people are moving out of Huron County. And then suddenly, as they start to approach retirement age, they move back. In Huron East, it's a little bit more consistent, so that you have people at from 0 to 49, kind of consistently at those timeframes. But then you do see a spike from 50 to 59 and 60 to 69 of people moving back to the community. If we can go to the next slide. We have seen a number of jobs advertised, and it seems to be increasing year on year. On average, there's about 440 jobs advertised across the county. Next one. And the position most frequently advertised is nurses, followed by licensed. So those nurses assistants is what they used to be called. Licensed practical nurses, home support workers, housekeepers, store shelf stockers, clerks and order fillers, retail sales and cooks. Those were the top 5 positions advertised in 2024. We also know from our business retention and expansion project that the number of businesses that need workers is not just positions like, you know, picking boxes and moving them somewhere, or, you know, giving pigs vaccinations, although those are important. A lot of people also need semi-skilled and skilled positions, and they are increasingly turning to international markets to look for those human resources. And so let's continue on. This is where we're currently at with immigration here in county. 4,200 people have moved to this area from other places in the world and now call Huron County home. 1,355 of those people, that's in addition, 1,355 are temporary workers, and that was temporary worker permits issued for 2022 and 2023. 135 international study permits were issued to people who live in Huron County. And this is an estimate, there's about 70 long-term visitors, and this would be people who are like Ukrainians who are here on a 3-year work visa, and it's considered a visitor visa. you'll see that, Huron East population or the number of immigrants who live here is quite high. You rank second, just after South Huron with 585 people who, live in the municipality. You'll also notice that, the number is down from 5 years earlier. So you have seen a slight decline in the number of immigrants who live in the community. But we'll go to the next slide. If we do this if we do the math and say, okay, the total number of residents divided by the total number of immigrants, the number of people who live in Huron East, what is the percentage of the population? About 6% of the population would be considered immigrants. This is all Statistics Canada data. And so new immigrants, and this is who we're specifically interested in, is people who moved here in the last 5 years. So and because we follow Statistics Canada, it's from 2016 to 2021. Huron County, there were 275 people who moved here and got their permanent residency here. So that doesn't include the temporary workers. And here in East, you'll see you've got quite a number, 85, that make up that 275. So within a 5-year time period. Let's go to the next one. Where are they from? Most frequently in this area, it's from the United States, Philippines, and Mexico. This Mexico one has been a mystery for me. I have wondered, where are the people of Mexican origin in Huron East? And I am curious, so we'll save that for the Q&A at the end, but I am curious about that one. Next slide. People move to the area because, and this is from research from Wayne Caldwell and a group that he did in 2017, they have existing ties. They know people here, or they're offered a job here, or maybe they just want a lifestyle that is conducive to the one that we all enjoy in Huron County. So you can see, here's the challenge, and this is where Huron East gets to pat themselves on the back, because you're able to attract more people to move here over a 5-year period than Huron County typically loses people. So Huron County loses people, they come here and then about half of them leave within that 5-year time period upon moving to Canada. Whereas Huron East, you're actually attracting, so you're doing something right. You can tell me what it is a little bit later on. Let's go to the next. We know this is a consistent challenge that people tell us they experience in our community. Discrimination is quite high amongst people who are immigrants. So 69% told us that they had experienced some form of discrimination in the past 3 years. We partnered with the University of Western Ontario on that study. And then we did a study last November and we asked people, what are the top challenges you face in this community? What's the top one? And you'll see the cost of living or money problems is a big challenge for people. Finding a family doctor, finding affordable housing, transportation, finding work that matches their professional qualifications. A number of people have said to me, yeah, Mark, but these are problems that everybody faces in our community. And the answer is yes, it is, but there's a difference. Immigrants usually move to a community and they don't have the same network to back them up. So, if there's a cost of living challenge, it's not easy to call someone and say, hi, I need some money for rent, or I'm a little bit short on food. There's nobody to turn to. So it's important that people get connected to services. Next. We also asked people, what would you like to see change? How can we improve the community for other immigrants who are moving here? And the top thing they said was, please create better programs to help us find work. Please improve the availability of public transportation. And is there more affordable housing? All right, so why immigration in rural and small communities? And so this is from Wayne Caldwell's book about attracting and retaining newcomers. Immigration is one channel through which small communities can have more confidence in a viable future. And he says the reasons to prioritize immigration in these communities is to address aging populations, to cope with workforce shortages, and to support economic viability by encouraging new immigrant-owned business development. And so when we talk about strengthening collaboration, we've got a couple of key ways to do that. We want to make sure that there's a no wrong door approach, that people who move to the community know where to go for help. We have a group of 25 organizations that meet quarterly to share information about what is new, what's happening in your world. What are you seeing? What are the challenges you're hearing about? What's the new programming that's happening that newcomers can access? And we take that information and share it out. We also want to make sure that we're tackling gaps and barriers, and so that we strike task-specific groups that work together with the number of partners to address issues. And then we also are prioritizing newcomer youth so that they help foster social connections that with the aim of keeping them in the community in the future. Or maybe they go to university and they decide to come back. When we talked about building capacity, what does that look like? Here's some examples of things that we've worked on. We've had workshops for municipal staff on building belonging in rural communities and understanding diversity. We've had workshops for community organizations on how to intervene in discrimination when they witness it. We regularly meet with employers to develop skills on how to attract and retain international talent. We are developing booklets. So one of the ones that has been popular this year is the newcomer guide, and it's provided to people as a wayfinding tool so that they can understand who's out there, what support is available. Building belonging, equity, diversity, and inclusion in rural communities is another booklet that we've just published. And it's to help organizations enhance their service delivery for immigrants. And then in terms of building welcoming communities, we help immigrants build social connections amongst themselves and with others. Longstanding residents through the Multicultural Festival, we host a newcomer day at camp and a Learn to Curl event. And then you can see Seaforth held a welcoming week event at the library, and so did Brussels, which were well attended. There's welcoming booths to help people learn about immigration at community events, and there's programs in secondary schools as well. And finally, we're conducting research, and we worked with the University of Guelph on the immigrant survey. We're currently working on a second research project to look at the experiences of housing that immigrants face in Huron and Perth. And that's really in response to that. We want more affordable housing. Well, we don't have money to build houses, but maybe there's information gaps that we can, and ways we can intervene if we do a bit of research and better understand the challenges that people are facing. So finally, our request to you is join us as we start developing information, select and appoint a representative from Huron East to join the Immigration Partnership Council. And that's the group of 25 organizations that drive immigration support in our region, and learn more about how to support newcomers to Canada in your community. And again, that commitment is 4 times a year, 2 hours each a meeting.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mark this time? Mark, I have a couple of responses for you. I've asked the question about how come Huron East was more successful bringing in the younger age groups, and also why our retention is a little bit better. And I'm told it was the cost of housing in Huron East was lower than in most other places in Huron County. And that's what drove certainly the younger families who are looking for less expensive housing. And once they had one, they found employment close enough that they were willing to stay, which certainly made a lot of sense to me. I don't know if you've heard that in the past or not. The other thing is, when you talked about the employment numbers and the number of businesses that are looking for something, like I'm well aware of a number of businesses that at the end of 2023 were scrambling, trying to find more and more employees. Come June and July, they not only weren't looking for any more, they were laying a lot of people off. And that's happened. So I don't know how updated all of that information is. I know you had some dates on there.
Yeah.
From some things. Have you heard more of that across the county?
Yeah, good questions. I would totally believe that affordable housing is a key driver to attraction. Because certainly that's what people tell us is a challenge, can't find affordable housing. And so when affordable housing is available, that's someplace that they're happy to move to. The second around the data is from Employment Grade Roofs here on Perth. And so that was published from January to July of 2024. So that's kind of consistent. I think maybe the industries that are looking for work have switched in that time. However, I am pretty confident to say that the healthcare concerns and healthcare personnel concerns are consistent across all that time frame.
I agree with that part. Counselor Schiffman.
Yes, thank you. So I'm trying to understand how, so if I'm an immigrant and I want to come through Canada, how do I end up in Huron County? Is there an office that does deal strictly with that, or how does somebody land here?
Yeah, so this is a great question. There's so many different avenues that people can come to Canada in. So like the government has 60 or 70 different pathways to come to Canada. So the first one is you come as a permanent resident, you pass the test to enter Canada, you have a position that you work in a profession that needs to be filled, you speak the language really great, and you can financially support yourself once you arrive. Okay, cool. You get to come to Canada and you find out that your brother-in-law lives in Seaforth. And so he says, come to Seaforth, we're gonna help you get a job. So that's where that pathway would go. Others, for instance, refugee family, a group from a church in the community agrees to sponsor you and suddenly you're here. There is no central office and where it's all coordinated from who goes where and how that's organized.
There must be some central office or database where they go online to apply. Is that through the federal
Yeah,
government?
that's through the federal government and that would be through Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship
Okay, I
Canada.
was just trying to understand
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, Mark. Good report, Mark. I know you and I have chatted about this different times, but around the Ukrainian refugees, and you had mentioned in your report, or just now in your report, about they're here for a 3-year permit. Is there a pathway to citizenship after that?
Yeah. So the Canadian government said, we're gonna create this pathway for people to come to Canada to escape the war. And when the war is finished, we expect this group to go back to Ukraine. Yeah, I heard that there's the war is far from finished, so people will get the chance to renew their 3-year visa at the end of their 3 years. That's what the government has told Ukrainians.
Any other questions for Mark? Mark, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you. We will at some point discuss a member possibly joining your group. I don't know where we put the engines, but.
Under other business.
We will go to planning report, part lot control exemption, PLC 04/2024. Welcome.
So I'll keep this presentation brief. Just an application for a part lot control exemption. Applies to 789, 799 Ryan's Drive in Brussels. And the owner and applicant is John Frieden. Next slide. So just an aerial of the subject property. So we're in the subdivision in Brussels. It's one of the larger blocks in the center there. Zoned high density residential and designated residential as well. The 6-unit row house has already been built on the property. So the purpose of this application is the applicant's requested the subject land be exempted from part lot control to allow for the creation of 6 conveyable lots, each with a dwelling unit. So just, there's a picture of the property, a couple months ago there. So all the units are individually serviced. I believe they're all being rented out now. And next slide. And just a visual of the survey, so kind of hard to see here, but there is an easement proposed, for access to the rear yards, and then there's also an easement at the front there, for plumbing services over one of the properties. That's all I have there, so just recommended that this application be approved and the corresponding bylaw be passed.
Can I get a mover and a seconder for the motion that was printed, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Deal, that the council of the municipality of Huron East consider the bylaw to provide exemption for part lot control for plan 596, part 34, registered plan 22R 7237, part 23, 789 to 799, Brian's Drive, Brussels. Any comments or questions at this time? All in favor? And motion considers. Thank you, Shay. Reports and recommendations of municipal officers. First one I have is the cost share agreement. Is Brad going to do the presentation?
He is available to do it if you would like him to speak. He's online.
I guess the question is, does anyone on council have a question on the cost share agreement? Being that the case, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I never thought to ask the gentleman when he was here. What if we say no? What happens?
If I understood correctly, he said if we say no, then it doesn't happen. Oh, are you talking about the agreement itself or if for work to go ahead?
The agreement. If we don't want to be, hanging out for years and years and not knowing how much and when. So we say no. What happens? Things go to rack and ruin, or?
I'm not sure if I can answer that. I don't know if the deputy mayor can or if the CAO can.
Still here.
Go ahead.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Still here, yeah.
So it would be my understanding that if there was no agreement with the municipality, then the authority, I would take that back to our membership. And to my thought on this would be that we would move to the decommissioning side of that structure if we needed to do any of that maintenance side of it. So that was our direction before. So right now, if there was no agreement, then the authority would have to say, we would then move to that decommissioning of that structure if there was any repairs needed. So again, I would take that to my membership for discussion, if that was the case, but from my previous discussions, I would see that being the case.
Thanks for that clarification, Stuart. Bob, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, but please, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Stuart, so if you decommissioned it, then the eventuality would be that you'd lose the mill pond and the ambiance and the recreation, et cetera, and it would just be a
Correct.
stream flowing through Brussels and full of mosquitoes and such. Whatever.
It would resort back to the original river configuration, correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's a fair question to ask, Councillor Fisher. If we had any concerns that we may not want to be part of it, we should have considered that before we bought new logs for it. Did I get a mover and a seconder? I did not. Okay. Can I get a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Steffler and Councillor Morrison, that the council of the municipality of Huron East consider a bylaw to provide exemption. Sorry, wrong one. That the council of the municipality of Huron East consider authorizing the mayor and the clerk to enter into a cost share agreement with the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority for the Brussels Mill Dam. Any more comments or questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Probably through you to Stuart. Stuart, no, this is fair to ask you. Is there a time limit on this? You know, is it renewed, say, in 5 years or anything like that? Or can it be? Because I guess I'm thinking, and it's more to do with what Councillor Fisher brought up. What happens if there's a new council sitting here, you know, in 4 years' time and decides to pull the plug and say, look, if this is too much, we just want to back away from that? Is there a process to do that?
They're in the agreement there. We have an agreement start date, but we don't have an end date. I think it would be fair to say that if the council did change their mind, that it would be brought to the Conservation Authority's attention, and it would just be exactly that, saying we can no longer afford to do this, and we would like to terminate that agreement. So yeah, so right now we just have it commences as of the 2025 January 1st under that agreement. So again, I think, like I said, if there was ever any chance that there was, they wanted to renegotiate that agreement. And again, that would apply to the authority too. So we talked about the M&R WECI fund. If that WECI fund all of a sudden in 3 years' time was no longer available, the province did no longer offer that, we would then have to come back to Huron East to renegotiate the terms of that agreement. It would no longer apply. So yeah, I think any changes would be brought forward through either party, and we could discuss.
I guess I was just concerned as long as it wasn't sort of written in stone that, you know, this is it and the way it
I know the agreement right now, when I looked at it, I don't think there's anything that says you're committed to, you know, anything in term. It would be, if there was changes,
Sure,
they would be brought to the authority for discussion.
Councillor Chartrand.
And to the deputy mayor's point, so if there's no end date, I guess in theory, we could put an end date on it to say that we take this agreement to the end of this council, which is like 2 more years, and then renegotiate or redo the agreement for the next 4 years of the next council. That's always an option too.
There may be other caveats that are already in there to our benefit, though. I'm gonna go to Brad. He's got his hand up to respond.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think the process would be that if I think what would probably trigger it, to be honest, through you to the deputy mayor, would be some major repair would come in place, and whether the council would have to make a decision whether they want to proceed or elect to choose one of the other options that are available through the agreement, which could be the decommissioning of the dam itself. So I think there's avenues to kind of move forward to it. I think Stuart's right. If we decide not to enter in this agreement, or at some point in time determined to leave this agreement, I think the outcome would be the same, which would likely lead to the decommissioning of the dam.
And maybe I'm incorrect, but what I understood was that if it's under $1,000, we're splitting the cost between that and maintenance anyways. And if it's over $1,000, it still has to get approval from council at that point. And if council said, no, we're not gonna go ahead with that one, then technically we can either just accept the fact that we're not, or we have to look at the agreement again.
Correct. There would be options, Mayor, that you could say, yes, we're going to not do that repair, and just that is the answer that is provided. And then that would make the authority then decide from there to say, okay, Huron East is not wanting to do that repair. The authority is not going to that repair, so we would move to the decommissioning side. We would have to look at that option. Or you could say we just want to postpone that repair until the following year to see if we can get the WECI funding. And that would be the options available, I guess, to Huron East to move forward with any of that.
So there technically is an exit strategy already built into it.
You're correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of council? Okay, seeing none, I have read the motion. If everybody's okay with it, all those in favor? 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That does carry. Thank you. The next one was for the clerk. She supplied us with a meeting schedule. Were there any questions of council? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. January, we only have one meeting, I understand, about Roma, but that's gonna be prime budget time too, so Is there, any thought given to that, please?
We could schedule, a second one, but we also considered that if we needed a second meeting for budget, we could also call a meeting to order or schedule that when it's closer to, depending on our needs. That same consideration can be given in December as well. The point for one meeting was also to align with statutory holidays and giving that break or buffer when we're returning from holidays with Christmas season with January and December, so. But definitely there is room in that month if another meeting were to be called to order for it. Or if you would like to put it in, then that's fine as well.
We always seem very rushed to get the budget done and not a lot of, time. I just wondered, thank you.
Certainly, if the majority of council wishes to have a special meeting, for budget, we will always do that. Oh, go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Yeah, well, certainly budget will be starting probably in November. And we'll, have some budget meetings as part of our regular council meeting. We could have special meetings as well, but I think staff's goal is to hopefully have the budget sort of wrapped up by January, so that we're actually passing a bylaw in January or at least early February. So we should be in good shape, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions with the schedule as presented, can I get a mover and a seconder to accept? Moved by Councillor Steffler, second by Councillor Chartrand, that the council of the municipality of Huron East establish the 2025 meeting schedule as follows, and those are the dates printed in your agenda. All those in favor? Motion carries. The next one, I will leave this to the clerk to start off, the council conference allowances.
It was brought up in our personnel committee on October 1st that we'd like to have those, I don't know the word I'm looking for, allowances brought forward for review to make sure they're current, they're getting the right amount, and just relooking at that policy. In honesty, we've been looking at this policy in kind of different sections the last couple meetings. So we looked at what our honorariums are, looking at the conference section. Regardless, the policy is going to be rewritten and coming back to council just for clearer language, and depending on what council direction gives for this. Currently, it looks like you get $5,000 for the term of council. There's some wording that can be misinterpreted, so it does sound like it could be over 2 years, but then it also sounds like it's the full term. So that's where those clarification pieces need to be tidied up. And I just provided a bit overview of kind of what our area municipalities are doing in terms of council conferences, including the county. So you can see the different scenarios that are used. As staff, we didn't put it as the full recommendation as we're looking for council to direct us, but there is the possibility of the 2,500 per year with kind of your max then at 10 for the term of council. So up to committee's discussion.
I was actually shocked when I looked through the list of what conferences cost. I know if you go to the Oprah, you technically can't go to 2 conferences in the 4-year term with what we receive. Which does seem like there's a little bit of a shortfall there. I do agree. I think it was Councillor Steffler that said it at the last meeting that if someone goes to a conference, at least, not everybody has to go to every one, or don't have everybody go to one conference, but the people that do go, at least bring back some sort of report to share the information that they get from the meeting. I think there's a lot of merit in that. Some people, enjoy going to the conference, some people get a lot out of it, have a lot of meetings. Other people just have no desire to go, and that's fine too. If you don't need to go, then don't go, for sure. What's council's take on the ambiguity of the way our policy is written at the moment? Is there any consideration to set it what it's supposed to be as a yearly basis, or for the 4 years, or how do we want to handle this? Councillor Chartrand.
I like this suggestion of the 2,500 per year, up to a max of 10,000 for the 4 years of your term. That makes sense.
At least then you've got an opportunity to attend one a year, depending on which one it is.
Right.
Some of them are a lot more expensive than others, and I don't understand why. Like the Ogra it's something like, I think, almost $1,300 just to register. You haven't paid for a hotel room, you haven't paid any mileage, you haven't paid any, transportation or, food or anything else. But then I think Rome is only, what, about $1,000?
I think last year it was just under 1,000, so they,
Yeah.
but you might be paying more for your hotel, that's where
Oh, yeah.
the differences start to add, some are cheaper and the accommodations might be more, or, but.
And the way it's wrote, or could be wrote, is that, so if I wanted to go to 2 or 3 in 1 year, as soon as you hit that $10,000 mark, then you're paying out of your own pocket. So whether I use it up in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, that's, you know.
Yeah, and some municipalities through you also went with, if you go beyond that, then it's subject to council approval. So say if you're getting closer, you feel that way, it could be subject to council approval, or you can just go back with the reimbursement as it's currently written. So there's just another avenue there too.
And if you took the total amount of 10,000 for all of us, a lot, like the mayor said, a lot of us don't go to them. So if somebody was to go over and we approved it based on the fact that you didn't spend any of raise money or somebody else's money, still in that pot of money for, you know. So I like that idea.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My interpretation of it was that we got 5,000 every 2 years. I was a little surprised when I was told I was reading it wrong or whatever, but I agree with the 2,500 or thereabouts.
I'm not sure that you were reading it wrong. It just may be the way it's worded. Because it was a little confusing if you read the policy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So we may not be making an actual change. We just may be correcting the wording right now to what the intent of council actually was.
I thought it was 5,000 a year, so every 2 years.
So if there's no objections at this point to the recommendation of staff, I just need a mover and a seconder, and staff will then try and fix the wording and bring it back for approval by council. Moved by Councillor Chartrand, second by Councillor Deal, that the council of the municipality of Huron East provide direction to staff in regards to council conference allowances. Leave the direction you understand at this point.
Right, for the year to a max of 10. We'll bring that actually back with the policy.
Okay, all those in favor? And motion carries. 10.4, OPP contract increases. Boy, that's quite a jump.
No kidding.
Welcome. Thanks for the good news.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry.
Not your fault, Stacy.
This is something that's happening to all municipalities. It's not just us, and some are experiencing much higher levy increases. So I've seen other municipalities coming in with like a 3.5% levy increase right off the bat. We're at about 2.7, a little bit over 2.7% levy increase right off the bat. It's unavoidable.
Stacy, I guess my first question is, like, they unfortunately don't have any obligation to explain to us in detail, but, was there an actual rationale of why it was such a big jump at one time?
It's because they were held to that 1% per year. Like Bill 164, froze wage increases for public service employees in Ontario. This is not just affecting OPP. It's affecting nurses, it's affecting teachers. So we may have an increase with our education this year as well. So the government held their pay increases to 1% per year for 3 years, and that was deemed to be unconstitutional. So it's been repealed, and now they're going back and correcting that. So now we're experiencing the correction. So we're going back and we're giving them retro payments. Now for the OPP, we're going back to 2023. For teachers, we're actually going back to 2019.
Wow.
For nurses, I don't know, but for us here, we're concerned with the OPP and the teachers.
Councillor Stefan.
Yeah, I also think we've had a significant increase in new hires, so more officers, more costs. We look at that, we should have more service, obviously, if there's more police on the street.
Not necessarily.
So it's gonna cost you more money.
I see a lot more out there with radar guns, but
That's good.
I haven't stopped. I just see them. Okay, are there any other questions for Stacy at this time? Fortunately, this is just one of those situations where you get the information and that's about it. it is just for information, so there is no need for a motion. Stacy, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good job.
Thank you.
Stacy. Actually, I should have asked a question earlier and it got by me and I missed it. And Stacy, you're on the hook for it. It was under the accounts payable. And it was one of the debt, credit or debit charges or whatever, one of the automatic payments, I think. It was $3.68 and it sounded like it was for a long distance company and it said for multiple departments. How the heck did we have multiple departments have enough long distance calls that came to $3.68?
I think if you look at the list, there should have been a whole list of multiple departments. Like, was there not more than one on that list? Sorry, I don't have it. in front
I'm
of me.
sorry, I will find it because there was no check number actually listed with it.
I saw.
It'll only take me a second to find it. Oh, boy. Well, I thought it'd only take me a second.
It's on page 22, Mr. Mayor.
I don't even know what page I'm on. Oh, there it is. Okay, there's the number. Thank you. Yes, direct debits. Yeah, Telezone Inc. Multiple departments, long distance. What I have written here just didn't make any sense to me.
I'll have to look into that off the top of my head. Usually when you see that, you see, like you look below and you see Hydro One Networks. It's going to multiple places, but.
I realize it's a very small amount. It's just, I didn't recognize the name and it seemed odd based on the description. Okay.
Off the top of my head, again, I'll have to get back to you, but I'll follow.
Nope, that's fine. Thank you very much for that. Have nothing under correspondence or unfinished business at this point, so we will go to council reports and council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So our last meeting was on October the 2nd. We had a gentleman there, Daniel from Siegel Construction, proposing municipal residential development of attainable housing, affordable housing, I should say, funded through a mix of municipal bonds and federal provincial funding. So that was more just for information. I did follow up with Mayor Jim Ginn about that, what he told us down at AMO, that the ministry was now going to start paying the municipalities 1/3 grant for the road work that was done with any drainage work. And the Mr. Ginn told me that that was totally false. So I spoke to the minister himself and the minister told him the wrong information. So anyway, so that was a bummer, that was. There was a severance application come up and involved a 100-acre farm where a gentleman wanted to sever 50 acres off that 100-acre farm and add it to the farm behind him, which was, I believe, a 100-acre farm. It was kind of very complex. In the end, it was defeated. The planner, Sandra Weaver, said that we don't allow 50-acre standalone farms, if I remember right. There's also, yeah, which
I was confused at because I'm sure we've allowed them in McKillop.
We did at one time, but I think that has been corrected.
because there was historical farms that were only 50 acres, and if I owned a farm with 250-acre historical 50-acre lots, I could sever that. I thought we did that. Because there was.
Are you saying historically it was 50 acres?
Yes, yeah.
And then it still exists, but I think it was taking 50 off of 100 that. Yeah.
But if you had a 100-acre farm that involved 250-acre historical lots, I thought we had severances where they split them apart.
That's why gray wasn't.
I'm pretty sure too, but anyway.
Ours is
a 50-acre farm. Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt your report, but even Councillor Ginn pointed out at the time we were having this discussion there was two parcels right beside this farm that were both 50-acre parcels that had been allowed.
Were they
County
recent?
council still wouldn't go for it.
Were they recent?
Why,
No, it said historically, that's the size they were.
Yeah, there were a lot. I know of a lot.
yeah, the thing that kind of confused all this, there was a gravel pit and a orchard, yeah, wine orchard farm involved in this too, so. Anyway, it was just a split decision, so I believe the warden passed the deciding vote and they, turned it down.
Go ahead, Larry.
I think that 50-50, that split 50 acres, I think part of that came from because a few years ago, did the county, when they went through their planning, automatically joined, like, the farmer owned 250 side by side, and they automatically joined that under one umbrella and made it 100 acres. And then the farmers, I think, after seeing their mistake, that's where you can come into your historical 50-50, then the farmer could split that off if it was originally.
If they were purchased.
Yeah, like the farmer had 50 on each
Yeah.
side of it, but and the county, when we redid the wrapping, whatever, they said the same farmer owns it, so now that's 100 acres, and that's what that is now, it's not 50. And they did that unbeknownst to the farmers at the time.
And the final thing I was just gonna touch on was the Huron County Museum, their storage building that they have, which is off-site from Goddard's there. We're running out of space and the storage building they have now is deemed not really big enough and not really suitable enough for an upgrade. So we're going to ask for an estimate, I should say, I guess, on the replacement building. So that's all I have. So if anybody have any questions or?
Seeing none. Are there any other boards, committees, meetings, or seminars that anybody would like to report? Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to squeeze this in here then. On November the 3rd, Ethel Community is gonna have their annual Ethel Fall Turkey Supper. So with all the fixings, it's $20 a ticket for adults and kids are $10 and 5 and under, I believe, are free. So they're going to have two sittings at 4 o'clock and at 6, and from 5 to 6 will be strictly just for takeout as well. So they normally sell a couple hundred tickets, so if anybody's interested, I will have tickets or we'll get tickets too, so.
Are there any requests by members at this time? Deputy Mayor?
I don't know where this would fit, but since we're talking about long-term care and stuff, should we be preparing the presentation for Roma? To speak to ministers?
Yep, absolutely.
So. It's
I believe Brad, I'm just wondering the deadline, I don't know if that's what Brad's about to.
Okay, go ahead, Brad.
Certainly we can. We haven't received any, like the delegation requests. Hasn't opened up yet, so once we could do that if that's what council wants to do. Certainly there's some conversations that will be happening to our MPP indirectly, so we can just work with her at least on the interim to see where it's at, and then may or may not need to have a conversation as the part of Roma.
Okay, but I think the point is well taken that, if there's an opportunity to request it, we'd like to do it. If we hear ahead of the conference, which is normally, we only hear 2 weeks before we go, that that everything is hunky-dory, then we don't need to take up their time. Or if everything goes really, really well, we can at least show up and say, thank you very much, here's some flowers.
right.
Certainly, I'd appreciate if council wants to think about any other matters they wish to speak about in relation to any other municipal business for those delegations, and maybe we could put something on the agenda for the next meeting just to see if there's any ideas so we can put in those requests, because you can put in multiple requests. I think you can put up to 3, or at least you used to be able to put up to 3 requests. So
Okay, all right. Councilor McGrath.
I would like to move that we give an updated cost of what the fire department's costing us. We spent, 2 meetings ago, we spent $100,000 one night on Medicaid, just come in off, and then we spent that 100,000 or whatever our police budget's going up. There's 3 things right there. And I'm sure we're short, and I think council should be made aware and be kept up to whatever this overspending is at this point, because I don't want to go into November budget time and have this number thrown at me all of a sudden and say, well, now what are you gonna do? Because I have never heard complaints about people's property tax as many as I've heard this year. And with fire, $100,000, the police budget going up. I mean, the police budget we can do nothing about, as said, it's coming, pay the bill. But the fire, it's, even if we have an update as to what it's costing us, you know, if it's 20, 50, 30, $100,000 more right now on our fire budget than what we were paying. Cause that's gonna hit us in the bottom line, and I don't wanna walk into a meeting in November and say, oh, well, we gotta come up with $900,000 here in the budget that we're short. And what are you gonna do?
Okay,
I mean,
so,
I want that knowledge up front before.
no, I appreciate that, and I'm gonna try and word this, to what I think you're asking for, and you can say yea or nay. I'm not gonna ask the staff to give us what our budget's gonna be for next year, because they're not at that stage as of yet, but I do believe you would like to know that, whatever increases over and above whatever unplanned increases, have come to light at this point, we would like that total brought forward so council's aware of the breakdown.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then at the same time, I think we may be able to say, okay, now we get into discretionary spending. There's like last year there was a truck, well, we didn't need it last year. It came this year, but we could do without it, so we put that money to something else. All I'm saying is to at least slow the pain down to the taxpayer, because the last thing we want is them getting burnt real bad, and you know, it does really concern me, because I'm in a lot of houses, seniors' houses, and I get a lot of people saying, well, when's this gonna stop? Like, oh, my taxes went up this much last year. And it isn't, you can't pay your taxes unless you got a tent for the backyard.
So Council McGrath has put forward a motion, that's to bring back a report highlighting either the unexplained or unexpected, increases, that had not been forecast in our 5-year budget plan, to a future meeting, as soon as possible, just so we can at least see the number. We're probably only talking 6 or 7 different things at this point, but, not a whole budget presentation. Do we have a seconder for this motion? Moved by Councillor Wilkie, or a second by Councillor Wilkie. All those in favor? And motion carries. Are there any notices of motion at this time? Seeing none. Any announcements by members of council? Councillor Morrison.
Since the last meeting, the Brussels Horticultural Society had their 70th anniversary and kind of, you know, memento. So I brought greetings from here in East on that, for all the work that they've done in Brussels and here in East for 70 years.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate you filling in for me. Is there any other business that anybody needs to bring up at this time? Deputy Mayor?
Mr. It's actually back to you. Were you gonna bring a motion forward? What's the size of the committee? Where did that go?
That's 14.2.
Oh, sorry.
It's
You're fine.
Yeah, no,
Sorry about that.
not a problem. 14.1 recommendation from the Personnel Committee, for the 2025 cost of living adjustment. The recommendation from the Personnel Committee was 2.1, and I do believe that fell within the policy of the council. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for that, now moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Chartrand. Is there any discussion of council at this time? All those in favor? And motion carries. And the next one is the one Deputy Mayor was just mentioning. I'm asking for a motion to reconsider the October 1st, 2024 motion regarding appointments to the Family Health Team Ad Hoc Committee. And I think I did highlight a number of the reasons of why I felt we should, Councillor Deal?
I don't know the exact wording of that motion, but I thought we left that open-ended, that if we needed to add more, we could.
I thought we specifically listed 3 names.
We did, but I thought it was in,
So, sorry, the motion itself was the mayor, the deputy mayor, and Councillor Fisher was what was approved as the appointments. There was previous conversations about getting a representative on the actual family health team board for information purposes, so
okay.
those were kind of 2 separate conversations. One was the ad hoc, and one was when we were looking at committee structures on how we can improve that as well. So there were 2, but before we get into too much of the motion and amending it, we just need to pass that we reconsider first.
Yes, and it will take 7 votes at the table, which is, just over 2/3, to bring it back to the floor for discussion. So my request is, now do we need a mover and a seconder for this? or-
So we do need a mover or seconder to reconsider the motion, but it is just a majority of it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so, moved by Councillor Chartrand and second by Councillor Wilby. That the Council of Municipality of Huron East reconsidered the motion from October 1st, 2024 regarding the appointments to the Huron Community Family Team Ad Hoc Committee. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. I don't remember exactly what I wrote in there, but I do know I had one member, mention it to me, that night. I had a different member phone me the next day, and I guess it basically got cut off a little quick when we, when Councillor Stepford said he'd like to, see Bob on it, as another C4 rep. And I certainly got thinking about it, and I think I listed my comments, Dr. Smith being, the biggest ward of population. Councillor Dalton was on the original committee that negotiated the deal, with the, doctors. And my point, whether it's valid or not, Brussels has one of the clinics and there isn't even a Brussels rep on the committee. So to me, it made sense to go back to what the actual recommendation, the motion was one representative from each of the wards, being represented. And if that's the case, then we again just need to list the names. Am I doing this right? So we've already had the vote to bring it back, so we're doing the discussion.
Yes, so now technically, yes, you're doing the discussion for that, and this would be an amendment to your original motion from October 1st. So you're reconsidering that one and now you're amending that motion. So you would have a motion tonight of the new appointments that you would want. So that's this right now.
Okay, so, as far as the Brussels members go, Councillor Newell has already, sent word to me that he has absolutely no problem if Councillor Morrison is willing to take the position for Brussels. If he's not, he'll take the job, but, he's more than happy to have, Justin do it. Councillor Chardon.
And I'll volunteer for the Tucker Smith one if Larry doesn't want to go, I can go, no problem.
Okay. I think he got the job. Go ahead, Larry.
I'll stick to my mission, my initial comment, and I think an ad hoc committee is not, we're arguing about council expenses for one thing, and now we're doing an ad hoc committee to go, what are we gonna go there for? We're gonna go to find out if we're comparing apples with apples, square footage to square footage, who pays for what pays for who. And that's gonna come back to council anyways to say, okay, you know, they get X amount of square footage and it gets snow removal, they pay the hydro, they pay this cleaning, and they pay this much a square foot. We pay this and they pay this much a square foot. This council's gonna get the report back, even if it's individual, but that's money, but I'm the odd man out, but that's okay. I got no problem with that, but I just don't see the need of a bunch of people sitting around the table. There's too many cooks in the kitchen spoil the meal, so that's my personal opinion, so.
And just to respond to that, I certainly appreciate, the point that you're making. And I'm hoping that we are well prepared by staff before we go. And it would only be one meeting so that we not only can present, our reasoning of why we do it, but also hear what the family health team has to say. And hopefully come to a recommendation that they're happy with or willing to accept that we bring back to council. I do not want this thing to drag on and on and on. We need to figure out what we're doing because I do believe, the contract comes due January 1 to renew. Although I do think there was some request to actually take it back to the beginning of this year, which seems to me not necessarily appropriate when we're already, 10 months through the year kind of deal. But I'm hoping that we only have to have one meeting with the family health team, as long as we're well prepared when we get there. That's my comment. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Larry. I was happy with 3 people. Last meeting, I don't think we need to do a ward thing, and so I will drop out of the proposed committee, and you can be the C4th rep. Thank you.
I can go either way.
No, done.
Well, no, it's not done, Councillor Fisher. We have to vote as a council.
Yeah.
I liked the recommendation. We have, an opportunity to have someone here from Tucker Smith. We have an opportunity to have someone here from Brussels now. The only ward that's not actually, picked at the moment, Councillor Wilby, you wanted to comment?
Yes, I'd like to see Councillor Dalton on it because she's the only person around this whole table that has medical experience. So I would very much like to see her on it.
So at this point, do I make the amendment or is it anybody makes the amendment?
Right now, it's anybody can move for the amendment, and just to make sure I have it correct, I'm not sure if Councillor Morrison has agreed to his, okay, just wanted to make sure. So we have Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Morrison, Councillor Chartrand, and then it's a decision that, Councillor Dalton would like to do that as well. But it's open for a mover and seconder from anybody.
Okay, and if it's not a problem, because I asked it to come back, I will move it. I need a seconder first before I make my question to staff. Second by Councillor Chartrand. We do need to, because this was brought to us 2 or 3 months ago. If we are going to have a meeting with the family health team, one, we need to let them know that we are preparing something and want to sit down. Any guess on what information we need as a committee will be available to us so that we're well educated and can make a presentation?
Part of the committee will be having staff representatives on that committee as well, so you'll have the information at hand when things come up. So it most likely have a financial treasurer representative, as well as maybe Lisa or Brad that would sit on it so that you have those conveniences and information as well. Brad does have his hand up.
Yes, Brad?
Yeah, you kind of said it earlier, just that there would probably be a sit down with the representatives of our committee with staff to kind of go through the lease agreement, go through our financials so everybody completely understands our position. And then we would proceed with a meeting with the family health team board. And then we'd listen to their position and their issues and then have conversation. So very much the way you described it at the beginning.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because I don't want us to get a report a week or a week and a half in advance. I'm hoping that we all understand it the same way and then get there and we don't have a good meeting. I want all the members to have all their questions answered by staff before we sit down. Because this here is, I don't want to call it contentious, but this is an important issue to deal with and how we move forward on this. So whatever we decide could have ramifications either way, and we need to understand that before we sit down with them. I've made the motion and I have a seconder. Are there any other questions at this point? Councilor McGrath.
The only comment I'll make is you are between a rock and a hard place. No matter what you do, they want a reduction. And it's a, who flinches first? You say, okay, no, we're not reducing to that. Do they walk? Do they not walk? If they walk, you've got nothing. You've got no rental talk. So I mean, I'm not putting a cards in anybody's hands, but unfortunately, that's why I don't think everybody sitting at the table is gonna make any difference. At the end of the day, it's gonna be, I'm paying this much a square footage in wherever, and I'm paying this much a square footage, and this is what they're including, and you're including this. And because Doug and the boys down there haven't increased my funding in 7 years because they don't think I need it. Unfortunately, that's not our problem or theirs, so that's the only comment I'll make, but yeah, good luck.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We know that. All those in favor? And motion carried. Thank you.
Thinking wrong, sorry, take that back. Take it back.
Number 15, bylaws. Can I get a mover to seconder for number 84, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Deal. That be it hereby resolved that bylaw 84, 2024, a bylaw to authorize a cost share agreement with the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority be given first, second, third, and final readings and signed by the mayor and the clerk and the seal of the corporation affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. Bylaw 85, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Deal and Councillor Steffler, that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 85 of 2024, a bylaw to provide an exemption for part lot control for 789 to 799 Brian's Drive, Brussels, be given first, second, third, and final readings and signed by the mayor and the clerk and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. Before I call the vote, I need to ask a question, and I never thought about this, but it does list all the odd numbers, which are on one side of the street, but it doesn't list the individual numbers. So does that mean that the people across the street have automatically got some sort of lot control?
That's one I'm not sure, we haven't had one come through for the other side of the street yet, and I'm not sure if that one's even done, so you might see one come through.
But all I'm wondering is if we actually write a bylaw that is inclusive from 789 to 799,
It's included.
the ones across the street are already included.
And I'm not sure, pardon?
You have to name them individually.
We probably have
Which
to
I believe
name,
they're named individually in the actual bylaw, so it's,
okay, and if that's the way it is, then
yeah,
I'm fine
this
with
is just
that.
short form wording, but if I look at the actual bylaw, because we have to go through the various easements. So it's listing out each part of the plans. So there's different part lot control for each piece.
Okay, all right. Good, thank you. All those in favor? And motion carries. And we have a closed session. Can I get a mover and a seconder to go in close? Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Dalton. All those in favor? And motion carries, and we'll give Jessica a couple minutes to get that ready. Thank you very much, folks.
John.